A remarkable discovery in Jerusalem with researchers uncovering a burial slab. This is considered to be the most sacred site in all of Christianity.
Tradition would say that Mary was buried. This would be Jesus' mother.
This is the tomb of Mary.
Hidden beneath layers of history, a mind-blowing discovery has rocked the religious world. After centuries of speculation, scientists stumbled upon a tomb that might belong to the Virgin Mary herself. As experts crack open its mysteries, believers and skeptics alike are on edge. Is this the bombshell that settles the debate on Mary's final days? Hidden beneath layers of history, a mind-blowing discovery has rocked the religious world. After centuries of speculation, scientists stumbled upon a tomb that might belong to the Virgin Mary herself. As experts crack open its mysteries, believers and skeptics alike are on edge. Is this the bombshell that settles the debate on Mary's final days? Beliefs about Mary's death. In the Catholic Church, there's a special belief called the Assumption of Mary. This teaches that at the end of her life, Mary was taken up into heaven, body and soul. But here's where it gets interesting. Catholics don't all agree on exactly how this happened. Some believe Mary never actually died, while others think she died peacefully before being assumed into heaven. The Eastern Orthodox Church has a similar but slightly different belief. They call it the dormition of the Mother of God, which means falling asleep. According to this tradition, Mary did die a natural death. But then something amazing happened. Her soul was immediately taken up by Christ, and her body was resurrected and brought to heaven 3 days later. Now you might be wondering, what does the Bible say about all this? Surprisingly, the New Testament doesn't mention anything about Mary's death or assumption. This lack of information has led to various interpretations and stories over the years. One popular story that emerged around the 7th century involves the Apostle Thomas. According to this tale, Thomas wasn't present when Mary died. When he finally arrived, they opened her tomb, only to find it empty except for her clothes. Some versions of the story even claim that Mary dropped her belt from heaven as proof of her assumption. The belief in Mary's assumption spread throughout the Christian world, becoming an official holiday in the Eastern Roman Empire around the year 600. But it wasn't until much later, on November 1st, 1950, that Pope Pius XII officially declared the Assumption of Mary as a dogma of the Catholic Church. This means it became a belief that all Catholics are expected to accept as true. Protestant beliefs about Mary's Assumption vary widely. Some groups that are closer to Catholicism might believe in a bodily assumption, while most Protestants do not. The Anglican tradition shows a range of beliefs, with some accepting the assumption, others rejecting it, and some considering it unimportant. Interestingly, even within the Catholic Church, there are different interpretations of how Mary's assumption happened. Some Catholics believe in what's called the mortalist view, that Mary died before being assumed into heaven. Others support the immortalist view, which says she was taken up without dying. A third group believes she died and was then assumed, known as the resurrectionalist interpretation. These different beliefs have led to various ways of celebrating Mary's Assumption or Dormition. The Catholic Church marks the Feast of the Assumption on August 15th. Eastern Orthodox and Eastern Catholic churches celebrate the Dormition of the Mother of God on the same date, but they prepare for it with a 14-day fast. In many countries, August 15th is a public holiday to celebrate the Assumption of Mary. Over 30 nations, including France, Italy, Spain, and many others in Europe, Africa, and South America, observe this day. People often attend church services and spend time with family and friends. Some places have unique traditions associated with this day. In Bulgaria, for example, the Feast of the Assumption is the most important celebration of the Virgin Mary in the Eastern Orthodox Church. People attend church, offer special prayers and gifts, and in the city of Varna, they even have a procession with a holy icon. What's truly remarkable about these various beliefs and celebrations is how they reflect the deep reverence many Christians have for Mary. Despite the differences in interpretation, the underlying theme is one of honoring Mary's unique role in Christian history. So how did these different beliefs about Mary's death and Assumption develop over time? Historical development of the Assumption doctrine. The Assumption of Mary doctrine didn't just appear out of thin air. It evolved over centuries, with roots tracing back to the early days of Christianity. Our story begins in the 2nd or 3rd century with a book called the Liber Requiae Mariae, or the Book of Mary's Repose. This ancient text is one of the earliest written accounts mentioning Mary's Assumption. However, it's important to note that this book isn't considered entirely reliable, and its ideas about Mary differ quite a bit from what most Christians believe today. For the first few centuries after Jesus' death, there wasn't much written about how Mary's life ended. In fact, a bishop named Epiphanius of Salamis but came up empty-handed. He discovered that people had different ideas. Some thought she died peacefully, others believed she was martyred, and a few even suggested she never died at all. As time went on, more stories about Mary's Assumption began to circulate. In the 5th century, writings like De Obitu Est Domini and De Transitu Virginis appeared, spreading the idea that Mary was taken up to heaven. These texts, while not considered fully trustworthy, played a significant role in shaping people's beliefs. By the 6th century, the belief in Mary's Assumption was becoming more widespread. In fact, around the year 600, the Byzantine Emperor Maurice made it an official holiday in the Eastern Roman Empire. This marks a significant milestone in the doctrine's development, as it shows the belief was gaining official recognition. How did the celebration of Mary's Assumption spread to the Western Church? Well, it arrived in the 7th century, brought over from the Eastern Church. Initially, it was celebrated as the Dormition, or falling asleep of Mary. Over time, in some religious calendars, the name changed to Assumption. The 8th century saw another important development. John of Damascus, a prominent theologian, wrote that Mary died in the presence of the apostles. According to his account, when they later opened her tomb, they found it empty, leading them to believe her body had been taken up to heaven. As we move into the Middle Ages, the doctrine continues to gain importance. In the 9th century, Pope Leo IV elevated the feast day status by adding special religious ceremonies called a vigil and an octave. Later, Pope Nicholas I placed the Assumption on the same level as Christmas and Easter, two of the most important Christian holidays. Did you know that visions and mystical experiences also played a role in shaping this doctrine? In the 12th century, a German nun named Elizabeth of Schönau had visions of Mary and Jesus that greatly influenced the Western Church's belief in Mary's Assumption. Fast forward to the 18th century, and we find Pope Benedict XIV declaring that believing in Mary's Assumption was a reasonable opinion. He even went as far as to say that not believing in it would be disrespectful to God. This statement, coming from a pope, further solidified the doctrine's place in Catholic theology. Now let's jump to the 20th century for a fascinating turn of events. On May 1st, 1950, a man named Jules Bianchi, who claimed to have seen visions of the Virgin Mary, delivered a message to Pope Pius XII. Bianchi said that Mary wanted him to share this message with the Pope. Interestingly, Pope Pius XII had been praying for a sign to confirm the truth of the Assumption doctrine. He saw Bianchi's message as that sign. Just 6 months later, on November 1st, 1950, Pope Pius XII made a monumental declaration. He officially proclaimed the Assumption of Mary as a dogma of the Catholic Church. This means it became a belief that all Catholics are expected to accept as absolutely true. The declaration, known as Munificentissimus Deus, stated that the Immaculate Mother of God, the ever-Virgin Mary, having completed the course of her earthly life, was assumed body and soul into heavenly glory. This proclamation was a significant event in Catholic history. It was only the second time that a pope had exercised the power of papal infallibility to define a doctrine. The first time was in 1854 when Pope Pius IX defined the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception. The timing of this declaration is noteworthy. It came just 5 years after the end of World War II, a period of immense suffering and loss of life. Some scholars suggest that elevating Mary's bodily assumption into heaven may have been a way to affirm the dignity of the human body at a time when so many bodies had been desecrated by war. Since its official declaration, the doctrine of the Assumption has continued to be an important part of Catholic belief and practice. Every year on August 15th, Catholics around the world celebrate the Feast of the Assumption. In fact, it's such an important day that it's a public holiday in over 30 countries. Now let's look at some numbers to understand the scale of this celebration. In the small country of Malta, where Mary is the patron saint, nearly 360,000 people, about 85% of the population, celebrate this feast day. In Poland, it's estimated that over 30 million people, around 80% of the population, observe the Assumption of Mary. As we reflect on this long journey from early Christian writings to official church dogma, a new question emerges. How has modern science interacted with these ancient beliefs? Scientific examination of Jesus' tomb.
For the faithful, it is a place of pilgrimage and worship.
For centuries, the tomb of Jesus Christ in Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre has been a site of reverence and mystery. But in October 2016, something extraordinary happened. A team of scientists finally got the chance to peek beneath the marble slab that had covered the tomb for hundreds of years. This unprecedented access opened up a whole new chapter in the study of one of Christianity's most sacred sites. The project, led by Professor Antonia Marapoulou from the National Technical University of Athens, was initially aimed at restoring the Edicule, the small structure housing Jesus' tomb. Little did they know that their work would lead to one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in recent years. As the team carefully removed the marble slab, they encountered a surprise. Beneath it lay a second, older slab made of gray marble. This unexpected find dated back to the Crusader period of the 12th century. But the discoveries didn't stop there. As they continued to dig, they found something even more astonishing. The original limestone burial bed, where, according to Christian tradition, Jesus' body was laid after his crucifixion. The excavation revealed that the burial bed was much larger than expected, measuring 1.8 meters long. It was cut out of the wall of a limestone cave, aligning perfectly with historical accounts of Jesus' burial. The team also discovered a cross engraved on the limestone surface, likely left by 12th century Crusaders. But here's where it gets really interesting. Using state-of-the-art scientific methods, the team was able to date the mortar samples from between the original limestone surface and the marble slab covering it. The results showed that the tomb had been sealed in 345 AD, plus or minus 17 years. This date corresponds remarkably well with historical accounts of the tomb's discovery and monumentalization under Roman Emperor Constantine in 326 AD. The scientific examination didn't stop at dating. The team used ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, and laser scanning to create detailed 3D models of the tomb and its surroundings. These advanced techniques allowed them to study the site's structure and composition without causing any damage. One particularly fascinating discovery came from the ground-penetrating radar. It revealed that beneath the current floor of the Edicule lies another floor, about 1.2 meters deeper. This suggests that the current structure was built on top of an earlier one, possibly dating back to the time of Constantine. The restoration work also uncovered evidence of earlier damage and repairs to the tomb. The team found traces of fire damage, likely from the many times the church has been destroyed and rebuilt over the centuries. They also discovered ancient graffiti on the tomb's walls, including crosses and other symbols left by pilgrims over the ages. But what about the body of Jesus? Well, as expected, no physical remains were found. According to Christian belief, Jesus rose from the dead 3 days after his crucifixion. The empty tomb is seen as evidence of this resurrection. The scientific examination of the tomb has had a significant impact on both religious and academic communities. For many Christians, it provides tangible connections to their faith's origins. For historians and archaeologists, it offers valuable insights into the development of Christian holy sites and medieval pilgrimage practices.
We consolidated the Holy Rock. We opened the tomb of Christ in order to protect it from the injection of grouts.
The restoration project, which cost approximately $4 million, was completed in March 2017. It involved cleaning and reinforcing the Edicule structure, installing a new ventilation system to control humidity, and placing a window that allows visitors to see the original rock of the tomb. Since the completion of the restoration, the number of visitors to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has increased significantly. In 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic, the site welcomed over 2 million visitors. Even during the pandemic, when travel was restricted, virtual tours of the restored tomb attracted hundreds of thousands of online visitors. The scientific examination of Jesus' tomb has also sparked renewed interest in other archaeological sites related to early Christianity. For instance, it has led to increased funding for excavations at sites like Magdala, the hometown of Mary Magdalene, where an ancient synagogue was discovered in 2009. But if scientific examination can reveal so much about Jesus' tomb, what might it tell us about other important religious sites? Claimed locations of Mary's tomb. The story of Mary, mother of Jesus, doesn't end with her son's crucifixion. In fact, her later life and final resting place have been the subject of much debate and speculation over the centuries. Various locations around the world claim to be the site of Mary's tomb or the place where she spent her final days. One of the most widely accepted locations for Mary's tomb is in the Kidron Valley, near Jerusalem. This site, known as the Tomb of the Virgin Mary, is situated at the foot of the Mount of Olives. It's a stone's throw from the Garden of Gethsemane and the Church of All Nations, places closely associated with Jesus' last days. The church built over this tomb dates back to the 5th century. To reach the tomb, visitors must descend a long staircase of 48 steps. The tomb chamber itself is small, carved out of the bedrock. Interestingly, this site is revered not only by Christians but also by Muslims who have a special place for Mary in their faith. But here's where it gets interesting. When the tomb was opened in 1972 during renovations, it was found to be completely empty. This discovery has been seen by some as supporting the belief in Mary's bodily assumption into heaven. Moving eastward, we find another claim in Ephesus, Turkey. According to this tradition, Mary accompanied the Apostle John to Ephesus after Jesus' death and lived there until her own passing. This belief is based on Jesus' words on the cross, entrusting his mother to John's care. The site in Ephesus, known as Mariam Ana Avi, or Mary's house, is a small stone house on Mount Koressos. It was discovered in the 19th century based on the visions of a German nun, Anne Catherine Emmerich, who had never visited the area. Despite this unusual origin, archaeological evidence suggests the foundations of the house date back to the 1st century AD. Every year, on August 15th, thousands of pilgrims, both Christian and Muslim, gather at this site to commemorate Mary's Assumption. The Turkish government has even issued postage stamps featuring Mary's house, recognizing its cultural and historical significance. But the claims don't stop there. In Turkmenistan, there's a belief that Mary's tomb is located in the ancient city of Merv. This tradition comes from Nestorian Christianity, an early branch of the faith that spread eastward along the Silk Road. The story goes that Mary traveled with the Apostle Thomas to India, passing through Merv on the way. Some versions of the legend say she died there, while others claim a relic of her, often described as a belt or girdle, was left in the city. While there's no archaeological evidence to support this claim, the belief has persisted in local folklore. The site associated with Mary and Merv is now part of a mosque complex, showing how religious traditions can blend and evolve over time. Heading further east, we find yet another claim in Pakistan. In the town of Murree, there's a shrine called Mai Marie da Aston, which some believe to be Mary's final resting place. This tradition is particularly interesting because it combines elements of Christian, Muslim, and Hindu beliefs. According to this local legend, Mary came to the region with Jesus and lived there for many years. The shrine is a simple structure, quite different from the grand churches associated with Mary in other parts of the world. Despite its modest appearance, it attracts pilgrims from various faiths who come to seek blessings and healing. But how did these diverse locations all come to be associated with Mary? The answer lies in the complex spread of Christianity in its early centuries and the way religious traditions often intertwine with local cultures. In the first few centuries after Jesus' death, Christianity spread rapidly across the Roman Empire and beyond. As it did so, it often incorporated elements of local traditions and beliefs. This process, known as syncretism, helped make the new faith more accessible to different cultures. At the same time, there was a growing interest in the lives of early Christian figures, including Mary. In the absence of clear historical records, legends and traditions sprang up to fill the gaps. These stories often reflected the desires of local communities to connect themselves directly to the origins of their faith. This brings us to an interesting question. How do scholars approach these various claims about Mary's final days and burial place? The answer is with a combination of historical research, archaeological investigation, and critical analysis of religious texts and traditions. One approach is to look at the earliest written sources. The New Testament doesn't provide any information about Mary's later life or death. The first written accounts of her Assumption or Dormition appear in apocryphal texts from the 3rd and 4th centuries. These include the 6 books Dormition Apocryphon and the Palm of the Tree of Life narratives. These early texts don't specify a location for Mary's death or Assumption. Instead, they focus on miraculous elements of the story, such as the apostles being transported from around the world to be present at Mary's deathbed. Archaeological evidence is another important tool. At sites like the tomb of the Virgin Mary in Jerusalem and Mary's house in Ephesus, archaeologists have found structures dating back to the early centuries of Christianity. While this doesn't prove these were Mary's actual resting places, it does show that they've been revered as such for a very long time. Scholars also consider the historical context. For example, the claim that Mary went to Ephesus with John is supported by the fact that John is known to have spent time in that city. Ephesus was also the site of an important early church council in 431 AD, which declared Mary to be the Mother of God. Despite all this research, it's important to note that there's no conclusive evidence for any of these sites being Mary's actual tomb or final home. From a historical perspective, we simply don't have enough reliable information about Mary's later life to make a definitive judgment. However, for many believers, the historical accuracy of these sites is less important than their spiritual significance. These places serve as focal points for devotion and reflection on Mary's role in their faith. Each of these sites has developed its own unique traditions and practices. For example, at the tomb of the Virgin Mary in Jerusalem, Eastern Orthodox Christians celebrate the Feast of the Dormition with an all-night vigil. In Ephesus, both Christians and Muslims leave pieces of cloth tied to nearby trees, believing this will bring blessings or healing. The diversity of these traditions reflects Mary's unique position as a figure revered across different faiths and cultures. In Christianity, she's seen as the mother of Jesus and a model of faith and obedience. In Islam, she's honored as the mother of the Prophet Jesus and is the only woman mentioned by name in the Quran. This wide-ranging veneration of Mary has led to some interesting interfaith initiatives. For instance, the House of Mary in Ephesus has become a place where Christians and Muslims come together in shared reverence. In 2006, Pope Benedict XVI visited the site and prayed alongside Muslim leaders, a powerful symbol of interfaith harmony. These sites also remind us of the complex ways that religious traditions evolve and spread over time. The story of Mary, carried across continents and centuries, has taken on new meanings and associations in different cultures. Each claimed location for her tomb or final days tells us something not just about Mary, but about the people who have kept her memory alive. In the end, perhaps the most important aspect of these sites is not their historical accuracy, but the way they continue to inspire and unite people across different faiths and cultures. What do you think about this discovery? Does it strengthen your faith or raise more questions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.